the longer term one, which I usually call the ambitious one. Yeah. So I think CD has to step out for a while. So apologies for that, but he'll be back soon. Yeah. So in the long-term career plan, this is above 5 years. So you can decide to split it into 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, 25, or you can just do, if you're like me, you can do 5 years, 10 years, and then to infinity. You know, that's the ambitious part. You just say the most ambitious or the end goal of your career path that you want to achieve. Just place it at the end. Because the whole point of this essay, like the first one, is to give you an opportunity to be very practical and very realistic. And what that tells whoever is reading your essay is that you actually understand what you're doing and you have a plan for yourself. Now, let me just also say this. It's not set in stone that whatever you write in the essays is what you must do with your life.
Yeah.
I think it's impossible to note that with more information comes more clarity. It's not like you're signing a contract with your destiny, that whatever you write down on this paper is what you must do. With your increased level of education, some of the goals that you've set, you might see that they are not within the scope, or you have more audacious goals that you want to achieve, or you want to go down a different path. That's perfectly fine. But whoever is reading your essay understands that you're writing from the aspect of someone who does not have that degree yet. So what they are trying to measure is your ability to imagine, dream, and project into the future what you want to achieve. So within that period, you just have to say what you believe is practical based on your own experience. Remember, it's your own personal experience. No one's going to judge you for it. When you move to the long-term plan, that is where you get the leeway to say, I want to be the president of my country. You can put that as your long-term career plan, because there's nothing wrong with you being the president of your country. It's achievable.
Yes, we're waiting.
Yeah, I think we have some CSA alumni that have gone into politics and have gone into very high places in their country's government and things like that. So if that's something you're aspiring to, this is where you're going to say it. If you aspire to be the number one person in disease prevention in your country, you want to head your country's disease prevention agency, this is where you say it. If you want to be the foremost authority, as maybe the academia on this particular research area that you're going into, this is where you talk about those things. But like I said, it's better you do it step by step. So if you do 5 years, so you've talked about up to the 5th year before, then you now say, from this year, this is what you're going to be doing, because you're aiming to get, so I want to be a director in the next 10 years, because that from a director, you become a manager, from a manager, you become whatever, depending on which industry you're in and what your career path looks like. If you want to be the president, maybe you start off by being a legislator first, and then after being a legislator, you graduate to being a governor, and after being a governor, you become an advisor, and then you understand the paths that you want to take. But it's up to you to actually lay it out. It's good to have audacious dreams, but if there's no plan, remember, this is not just about you writing about your dream. This is a career plan. So I always tell people, if you can make it look step by step, it always makes more sense to someone who's reading it, that I'm going to start from here and then do this next and then do this next, and eventually I want to be that. That makes more sense to me than waking up in the morning and saying, I'm going to be the president of Nigeria. Okay, you're going to be the president of Nigeria. Okay, what are you going to do to do that?
Why are you laughing?
Maybe from the blues. No, what I may add on that, Buche, is the fact that long term logically would have to be a development on the short term.
Oh,
right.
So you said it.
Yeah, that's right. So what you need to do is to make a projection. You have identified development issue and what you hope to acquire and how you're going to go about it. So in the long term, you should be able to project yourself to be at a position to be able to have impact on that. Whether you're looking at the health sector, whether you are looking at, let's say, energy. In my case, because I'm focused on Islamic finance, my long-term goal is that career path is that I will become an authority in Islamic finance. I will become a force to reckon with when it comes to Islamic finance in the Gambia or perhaps in the region. But it has to start with the fact that, okay, I am somehow involved now. And in the next 5 years after completion, I plan to work with either the Central Bank of the Gambia or the only Islamic bank in the country and the University of the Gambia And then gradually it has to build from that. Like Butcher said, it has to make sense to anyone reading it. For those, for example, those that are not working from undergraduate program, they are now applying to go into their masters. It's important that they at least highlight one or two things in the short term. For example, okay, if I finish this, currently I have no work experience, but if I finish this, perhaps you want to start with internship if possible, because things could be very difficult back home, especially let's say in Nigeria, right? You can complete, for years without even picking a job, right? So in terms of building your long-term career, for example, in the beginning, you say, okay, you can start with internship, pick up an officer job, move on to middle-level manager, then depending on the focus or the industry that you're looking at. But it is always logical and reasonable to have your long-term goal having a bearing on your short-term goal. And this would be different depending on where you are currently, because some of the prospective applicants might be working at the moment, some might not be working, some might have some work experience. So it's always logical and reasonable to build your long-term, career, goals based on where you are at the moment or your short-term career goal. At least that way it will be logical.
Yeah, may I add, is because some people, like what Biki said earlier, that towards the objective, that it doesn't mean that you must do everything you say in your objective, because as you start your program, you can see what other things that you might want to explore. So same thing in career path. Some people might be scared and say, what if I say I want to become this and I change my mind tomorrow? Nobody is saying that it must be fixed, but to have a clear goal that if you go along this line, this is what you will possibly do. If that makes sense. So that's what we are saying. Yeah. But I also love what Siri mentioned, that the career part of the long term should build on the short term. There's this joke we used to make that if you want to become a medical doctor and you do not go to School of Medicine, the only doctor you become is a herbalist or whatever it's called. So we keep making that joke because some people, their career path is planned for the long term is great, but you look at the short term, there is no correlation at all. It doesn't fit in. So people reading your essays can tell that this essay was written by one person because everything interlaps. It's interwoven in each part. It can tell that this is one person essay, this is one person vision. So if you don't know your career path so well, it's not too late. Go and do some research. Ask people in your field, what is the career development in this area? How those things work, so you can have an idea of what to write. So I think that was.
If I may just add on that, I don't think CSA will actually monitor your career path. But at the end of the day, someone sitting behind the desk reading your essay, it has to make sense to the person. It's the journey, Ejiro, as you will attest, the journey is going to be as dynamic as PhD journey. In PhD, you can start with one thing. Midway, you find yourself doing something entirely different.
Most of us have.
But at the end of the day, exactly. I think that's quite common in PhD. It's unusual, right, for you to come up with a topic and continue with that. If that happens, they will tell you perhaps you've not consulted the literature enough, right? But what is important here is someone sitting behind the desk, reading your essays, your career goals. All of them should make sense from the first impact statement down to your long-term career goal. All should have a bearing on your SDGs that you identify and should have at least a link to at least one of the thematic focus of the CSC. I think, like we said, this is going to be unique for everybody because we have our unique journeys. But if you take this as a generic advice, that at the end of the day, whatever is that I'm going to write, it has to be logical and it has to make sense to whosoever is going to read it. I think that will be your key message and your key guiding principle in writing your essays.